and welcome back to day 3 of Invest in Your Planet, a career speaker series presented by Palm Beach International Boat Show Gives Back and proudly supported by Keep Palm Beach County Beautiful and Waste Management. My name is Lauren Henderson, and I'm the Director of Secondary Programs for Junior Achievement of the Palm Beaches and Treasure Coast. We are so excited for you to be here with us today as we continue our adventure across the Palm Beaches and Treasure Coast to learn more about the different job opportunities in the marine industry. Today, we are here in beautiful West Palm Beach, and we are at Manatee Lagoon, an incredible organization that dedicates their time to not only educating the public about manatees, but also the importance of preservation of the environment for future generations to come. So why don't we come on inside and take a look? Hi everybody, welcome to Manatee Lagoon and FPL Eco-Discovery Center. My name is Rachel and I am the Conservation and Education Manager here at Manatee Lagoon. So we are going to go on a virtual field trip of our exhibit area. Then we're going to end outside where we get to see hopefully some manatees, but maybe not. We'll talk more about why that is. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the building. We're going to meet some of our amazing team members who are known as Manatee Masters, and we're going to learn all about manatees and the Lake Worth Lagoon ecosystem. Are you ready to get started? Let's go. All right, everyone. I am here with Danielle, and we are going to learn a little bit about manatees. So Danielle, these are pretty cool statues. Are these how big manatees actually are?
Yes, so these are actually our life-size manatee replicas. So on average, our manatees are going to be about 10 feet in length and weigh about 1,000 pounds.
Wow, that's really big. That's so cool. So what exactly is a manatee? What kind of animals are they?
So manatees are actually mammals just like us. So they are warm-blooded, they have hair on their bodies, and they feed their babies milk.
So cool. Mammals just like us, huh? So we have our little baby manatee here and some adults with it. That's really neat. And we have lots of manatees here at Manatee Lagoon sometimes, right? Why do they come here?
So the manatees actually like to come here because we have a warm water outflow from our FPL Next Generation Clean Energy Center next door. So that power plant warms the water, and the manatees like to come here and spend time in that clean, warm water during the winter months.
So cool. So they don't come here to visit me because I'm so cool. They actually come for the warm water. All right.
They like you, but...
All right, that's fine. So they come here for that warm water outflow in the winter months. Now tell me, Danielle, is it really cold outside today when you were walking in from your car?
No, it is very nice and sunny and warm. So unfortunately, we don't have too many manatees hanging out here today.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get to see some, but we are at the end of season, right? So there's a manatee season. When is manatee season?
So manatee season in Florida is going to actually run from November 15th to March 31st.
Cool. So we are outside of manatee season now, but we're just at the tail end. Now today we want to talk not just about manatees, but we also want to talk a little bit about some careers in marine science. So what do you do here at Manatee Lagoon? I left that out when I introduced you. What's your title, and tell us a bit about what you do?
So I am the education coordinator here at Manatee Lagoon. I oversee all of the school programming and summer camps. So if you come to Manatee Lagoon to learn something, I've probably had something to do with it.
Awesome. Education is such a fun way to get involved in science, to be able to teach other people all about the amazing scientists that researchers are doing. So did you always know you wanted to be an educator? What was your path looking like getting here to Manatee Lagoon?
So I didn't. I always really liked science. So before coming here, I was actually a high school biology teacher. And that's really where I fell in love with education and science. And I grew up in Florida and I've always loved the environment. So this was the perfect fit for me.
And we're so lucky to have you. Thank you so much, Danielle. Are you guys ready to go over to our next area? We're gonna meet Manatee Master Maya, and we're gonna see some really cool manatee skeletons. So let's head on over this way.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Maya. So Manatee Lagoon is a public education facility, right? And we love to teach the public who come visit us every day here all about manatees. And one of our favorite things to talk about are these two skeletons. So I'm going to take a step over to the side here while you tell people, are these skeletons real, and what happened to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So these two manatees are in fact two real manatees. They were brought to us by FPU's Harbor Branch. And so the big manatee over there is an adult female. Her name was Sketchy. And the reason why she was named Sketchy is a bit of an unfortunate reason. But when she was alive, she had these scar markings on her back that looked a lot like someone had drawn very messily on her. Thus, she got the name Sketchy. And now you might be thinking, why exactly would she be getting those scar markings? And so one of the top reasons why manatees have scars, about 96% of manatees have scars due to boat strikes. It's a very unfortunate thing, but sometimes manatees are a little too slow and boats go a little too fast, and they don't really see the manatee in time. And so unfortunately, Sketchy there suffered some pretty bad injuries, and she unfortunately passed away. But the little one here is an unknown female manatee. She is not a baby of Sketchy, to our knowledge. But she died to something called cold stress. It's very similar to hypothermia in humans. If you get a little too cold, like for manatees, the reason why they come here to Manatee Lagoon, as Daniel mentioned earlier, is that they need that warm water. And manatees don't have that sort of jacket put on them. They don't have a lot of fat on their bodies, if any at all. And so this little one probably was in an area for a little too long that was a little too cold, because any temperatures below 68 degrees is a big no for manatees.
Wow,
so
68 degrees.
Yeah, 68
They
degrees.
don't like the cold at all, do they?
Really don't.
So the smaller one, you're saying it unfortunately did die due to cold stress from not being able to find that warm water like here at Manatee Lagoon, and Sketchy, the larger one, died from boat strikes. So boat strikes, correct me if I'm wrong, Maya, but boat strikes are the leading human-related cause of death for manatees,
Yes,
right?
human-related is the most important part.
Yes, and cold stress, if I'm not mistaken, is the leading natural cause of death for manatees.
Also correct.
So it's kind of sad that we have these manatee skeletons here because unfortunately they did die due to two of the leading causes of death for manatees, but it's pretty cool that we're able to use them as teaching tools. So can we show them the hands? Do manatees have hands, Maya? Because it looks a lot like a hand to me.
So manatees don't have hands. If you ever see a manatee, they do have flippers, but they do actually have fingernails, much like one other animal, an elephant. So much like how an elephant has toenails, manatees do in fact have fingernails, probably due to an evolutionary trait that's sort of passed on and sort of stuck around with them, but they use their hands sort of to have a better surface area. So when they're swimming, they're able to sort of have more space to sort of paddle, much like how when you swim, you sort of need a paddle.
Yeah, kind of like when you're swimming, you cup your hands, right, to give yourself more movement versus having your fingers open. But hang on, Maya, you were just talking about elephants. This is Manatee Lagoon. Why were you talking about elephants?
I know, it's weird, but the elephant is in fact the closest living land relative to the manatee. And one of the things that we know that show us that they are relatives is one, those fingernails, and two, they have a very cool thing with their mouths, if you want to.
Yes, what a beautiful transition. Maya, tell us a little bit about this jaw.
So much like a manatee and also an elephant, so these are something that we like to call marching molars. And so you'll notice that there's sort of a lot of teeth that are missing out in the front. And the reason for that is because a lot of the times, as manatees are picking up seagrass, which is what they eat, they often end up picking up a lot of sand and sediment, and that ends up eroding their front teeth. But not to worry, manatees, their back teeth will grow in place of their front teeth. And so it's much like how a conveyor belt, these back teeth will push in the front to take place of the front teeth that are missing and regrowing their back teeth. But they will be regrowing their teeth for the rest of their lives. And so much like manatees and elephants, they have marching molars.
Wow, that's really cool. And what's their favorite kind of food to eat with those molars?
Seagrass.
Seagrass.
Much like how a cow eats its grass, a manatee has to have seagrass.
Awesome. We're going to talk a lot more about seagrasses when we meet our next manatee master. But before we do that, let's switch gears and let's talk about some careers in marine science again. So Maya, tell me a little bit about what a day in the life of a manatee master is like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty lucky. It's pretty fun. So when we come in, we do something called manatee counts. So every day we walk around the perimeter of Manatee Lagoon, and we look out onto the water and we see not just if there are manatees in the water, but also other wildlife. So other barracudas, sometimes we get a lot of sharks, sometimes we get some stingrays, just anything in the water, we will make a note of it, just to let everyone know that this is what we find here at the Lake Worth Lagoon.
Yeah, there's lots to see at the lagoon, not just manatees, right? Yes. Awesome. And what's your favorite part about being a manatee master?
I love being able to interact with the public. I love being able to ask questions. We are always at the front desk, ready to be answered, any questions that people have, and it's always really fun interacting and seeing what people know and what people don't know.
Awesome. And I've got one final question for you because I have a little bit of insider knowledge about Maya here. And I happen to know that even though you work as a biologist here, your passions might lie somewhere else. So what are you going to school for right now?
Yes, so I am majoring in psychology, which is a little different from biology, but I love psychology. Eventually I do want to become a therapist. But I have always been really interested in being a marine biologist when I was a kid. That was my dream. And I figured this would be a great place to sort of put my two loves together because I love being able to interact with the public, but also learning a little bit about animals, teaching other people about animals as well.
Yeah, and how could a psychologist use their trade in marine biology?
Yeah.
Is there a way that those two could connect?
Yeah, so in fact, animal trainers, so like people at SeaWorld, when they train their dolphins, they use a lot of psychology to make sure that they train their animals, so things like classical conditioning and stuff like that that you find in psychology, you actually use at an animal trainer. So if you're interested in that, maybe psychology might be the path for you.
So cool. And I bet a lot of rehab facilities have to train their animals to come up to them for, you know, the veterinarian to look at them and maybe look at their teeth or something like that. And I bet they use psychology to help train them with that too.
Yeah, you don't want to scare them, and so psychology does very much help with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maya. This was really cool to learn about. Are you all ready to go learn about a manatee's favorite food a little bit more? Awesome. So we're going to head over this way and we're going to meet Manatee Master Carson. Thank you, Maya. All right, let's head over this way to our seagrass exhibit. And there is Manatee Master Carson ready and waiting to teach us all about seagrasses. So Carson, this is a pretty cool exhibit here all about seagrass. We know that manatees eat seagrass. We just learned that with Manatee Master Maya. But other than being a food source, why are seagrasses important?
Ooh, that's a very good question. So I did hear you say before that seagrass is manatee's favorite food, but seagrass is a lot more important than just being food for other critters. So it's not just manatees or sea turtle food, but it also is kind of the foundation of our habitat. So kind of like any old house or building that you might go into every day, it needs a good foundation. So if we have a good, healthy seagrass habitat, we're probably doing pretty well with our ecosystems as well.
Awesome. And it looks like we've got some seagrasses over here. So these are some seagrass tanks with some fake seagrasses trying to teach us something. What are these tanks teaching us, Carson?
Well, so this is a brand new addition to our facility. It's been pretty popular so far, but you'll notice there's two halves of the tank. And that's supposed to kind of give a good look at what seagrass can do for an environment when it comes to all the sandy stuff at the bottom. So you'll notice on our half where there's not too much seagrass, there's only really one type of seagrass. We're starting to get a lot of picked up sand all over the place. It doesn't look too fun, it looks kind of sad. But when you have ecosystems that have a lot of different types of seagrass, that has a lot of very tall and expansive seagrass habitat, you start to see a retention. It starts to hold on to that sand, and it makes for a much better habitat. So this looks a good bit healthier than our other side over there.
Yeah, you can definitely see a difference. There's more seagrass here. The water's really clear versus over on this side, it definitely looks more murky. And I don't know about you all, but I think if I was going swimming, I'd rather swim over on this side where it's nice and clear. And I bet a lot more animals would live in here because it looks like it provides a lot of shelter too, right? If I were a little fish trying to hide from a predator, it would definitely be easier to hide over here than on our little seagrass desert side over here. Cool. Thank you so much, Carson. So seagrasses are super important. They're really cool. Is that the reason? I've heard manatees migrate, right? We have this manatee season from November through March. Do the manatees migrate for food? What are they migrating for?
So yeah, I heard you guys talking about the manatee season. So a lot of manatees' movement is based on temperature. But food is another really important resource as well. So they have to go where they're warm, but once they get to a warm place, kind of like Florida, or when it's summertime where they don't have to worry about the cold too much, their main concern is going to be food. I mean, they do like to go to the disc hill, but food is going to be their most important resource. So an average manatee has to eat 4 to 9% of its body weight every single day. So depending on your manatee, that could be up to 100 pounds of food every single day.
That's a lot of food. So it probably helps that they have those marching molars we just learned about when they're chewing on all that seagrass all day, right, wearing down their teeth. And when they migrate, where do they go? Do all of them disappear from Florida this time of year, or are they hanging out?
So they're not quite all just exiting Florida. It doesn't get that hot for them. They kind of just like to spread out to find food. So when it warms up in the summertime, they're able to kind of do some traveling, maybe go to some summer houses up in Georgia or maybe even North and South Carolina. So they like to definitely spread out. They don't like to shop in one aisle of the grocery store, if that makes sense.
I get that. I understand. Sometimes in the summer months, I get a little bit of wanderlust too, and I want to go travel as well to get some good food. Yeah, but I definitely love coming back down to South Florida in the winter. So the manatees are kind of like our original snowbirds. They come down here in the winter months when it gets cold, and they spread back out to other parts of Florida, like Carson was saying, when it warms up a bit. Really cool. So Carson, you're a PhD student at FAU. That's pretty cool. What are you studying over there?
I am a PhD student in the Department of Geosciences. So that's the study of basically Earth and all of its processes. So it could be rocks one day, it could be dinosaur bones the next day, or it could be looking at the ocean the day after that. There's a lot of different things I can get to learn about.
That's really cool. And would you mind telling us a little bit about what you're studying? I'd love to hear what your project is.
So my project focuses on really tiny little guys. So I'm in the paleontology lab, so I study ancient life. And my little section of ancient life is microorganisms or microfossils. So I basically go out with a hammer, I chip away at some rocks or I collect some dirt, and I put it under a microscope and I look at who's hanging out there. So it's a very cool job, and it's a very interdisciplinary thing. It takes a lot of different backgrounds to be able to kind of do that research.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. There's so many different ways that the different sciences all can kind of interact. So research is a really cool one. We learned a bit about education from Danielle. We learned some how psychology can be in marine science. And now we learned a bit about geosciences. But Carson, there are some other pretty cool jobs that you can have in the field of science, right? So tell me a little bit about this wall right here.
So this entire wall has been a huge hit with our visitors because it's very new, and a lot of people ask, what is seagrass? What does it look like? So one of our manatee masters, Shelly, was basically doodling one day, and it turned into an entire exhibit here. So Shelly is one of our more artsy manatee masters, and she basically wanted to look at, okay, what are the main species of seagrass, and how can we really tell a story about this very important part of our habitat? So here you have the 7 different species of seagrass, most of the time that you find in Florida. And here are the 2 really big ones that we always like to look at, those being manatee grass and turtle grass. And you can obviously tell, that's they grow very tall, which makes it very good for eating for our manatee friends.
Cool. So this whole wall here was designed by one of our own team members, and she drew all this. So even arts has a really important part to play in the field of science and in marine biology, because in museums and different textbooks, you're going to need some illustrations in order to really show people what's out there. So that's really cool. Thank you so much, Carson. We loved learning all about the seagrasses and some of the other really neat careers in marine science. Are you all ready to go to our final station and meet our final manatee master, Nicole? All right, let's head on over. Bye, Carson. Thank you. All right, so we've got some really cool fish tanks that you guys are going to see as we're heading over to talk to our last manatee master, Nicole, all about some of the threats that manatees face and what we can all do to help. So once we loop around to the other side of this wall here, you guys are going to see one of my favorite aquariums that we have here at Manatee Lagoon. Hello, Nicole.
Hello.
All right, everybody, we are now here. This is our tank of marvelous mangroves. And this tank is kind of like a snapshot of what we see out in the Lake Worth Lagoon. So Nicole, can you tell me what kind of ecosystem is the Lake Worth Lagoon?
So Lake Worth Lagoon is actually an estuary, and it consists of brackish water. Brackish water is a mix of salt water and fresh water mixed together.
Wow, and why is it important? I see a lot of small fish in here. Is that for a reason?
So it provides basically a habitat for them. So like Rachel said, it mimics our habitats we see out in Lake Worth Lagoon. So we see a variety of fish here, like our sergeant majors, our big-eyed soldier fish. We see a hawkfish, he's hiding somewhere, not visible. But we also have our yellow-tailed damselfish as well. So a variety of species we see out here in the Lake Worth Lagoon.
Yeah, lots of cool things to see, and this acts like a nursery site, right, for those baby fish to grow up before they go out into the ocean. So the Lake Worth Lagoon is the body of water you guys are going to get to see in just a moment when we go outside, and it's a really cool spot where the manatees will travel through, and lots of other marine life can be seen too. But Nicole, we would like to talk a little bit about some of the threats to manatees. So Maya talked a little bit about some of them in the beginning, but let's go over them again. What are some of the threats?
So I know that Maya probably mentioned a natural threat, which is picturesque, which you guys learned about. Manatees can't really stay in water below 68 degrees, so they'll try to look for that warm water resource, and they come for Manatee Lagoon's hot water resource that we provide for them, so it's kind of like a hot tub for them. And then we have a human-related one that we also talked about, which is boat collisions as well. So boat strikes are a big one. They can't really turn their heads in general, so they have to move their whole body to actually prevent the boat strikes from happening, but they're not really good at that. And then we have our red tides that occur mainly on the Gulf Coast, and they can actually present a breathing problem for manatees. So we try to raise awareness more on red tides.
Yeah, so we've got boats and pollution too, right?
Pollution's a big one. I missed that one. So manatees can actually get entangled in fishing line, actually. And so it presents a problem for them just because they're not really good at untangling, right? Because they don't really have fingers, so they have flippers. So they can actually self-amputate if needed. And also they can indigest pollution or trash as well in the ocean.
Yeah, so digesting any trash or getting tangled up in it can be dangerous. And as we talked about with Maya, those boats can be super dangerous. So you probably saw me pull this out. So tell me, what's going on with these white markings on our little manatee friend here?
So these white marks are actually scars that manatees get from any boat collisions. And this is actually how we distinguish manatees apart. So we can't really tell them apart because manatees all look the same, right? So we use their scar ID to actually.
So Nicole, go ahead and hold this one for a second, and let's show everyone. Their faces look pretty similar, right? It'd be hard to tell these two manatees apart, but if we turn them and show those scars that they have, you can tell right away, especially for our friend here with missing tail, that these are two different manatees. So just like Nicole was saying, we can use those scars, as sad as they are, to help identify different manatees. So this one right here, he's a manatee from Blue Springs known as Floyd. And who's that, Nicole? This is Gator the manatee. Yeah, so we've got some really cool ways to teach people all about these animals. But we want to end on a more happy note before we go outside and see our outflow. So Nicole, tell us, what can everyone do to help now that we know the threats?
Well, we talked about pollution. That is one. So we can use the big three: reduce, reuse, recycle. We want to make sure that we're disposing of our fishing lines accordingly. If you ever see a receptacle out in a boat, make sure you dispose of it in there and not in the water, because we don't want our manatees to get entangled. And also, we can slow down when we're on our boats, right? We want to be mindful of manatees. They can't really avoid boats too well. So, yeah. And then we can also make sure not to feed them. Keep our distance.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Make sure to take pictures from a distance, not get too close or touch them. And yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to affect their natural behavior, right? We want to keep our wildlife wild. So if you're ever lucky enough to see any wildlife out there, just make sure you give it its space and don't change its natural behavior at all. That's also great, Nicole. So I do have some other questions for you before we move on. A little bit about yourself. So you're a student at Florida Atlantic University, right? What are you studying over there?
So I'm currently studying geosciences, and I'm actually focusing in GIS mapping.
Ooh, GIS mapping. What exactly is GIS mapping?
So GIS mapping is geographical information systems, and that helps us, researchers in general, plot, natural resources like soil or different habitats of different species. And we can also, specifically focusing on manatees, we can actually focus on seagrass bed population. So looking out into the lagoon, we can basically visualize where we're seeing the most seagrass bed population, and wherever there's seagrass beds, there's manatees. So that's kind of like a comparison you can do with GIS and manatees together. But then again, we can look at population as a whole for other.
Cool. So it looks like there's a lot of different ways that you can use mapping in science. So mapping out those seagrass beds so we know which areas to protect, right? Which areas, maybe could it work if you had a map and you knew where the seagrasses are, and then if the seagrasses died off or grew more, would you be able to kind of tell based on that map? Is that another way we could use it?
Yes, for sure. It's great, like I mentioned, for population and see how it's doing. We want to make sure to look at seagrass degradation as well. If it's not doing too good, what we can do to basically prevent that. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. This was so fun learning all about the threats and what we can all do to help. So for the final few minutes of this virtual field trip, we're going to head outside. I'm going to show you guys where the manatees usually gather. And then if you have any questions, go ahead and start typing those up now, because we'll take some questions outside. Let's go. All right. So let's head out right here. If we want to, we can go down closer to the outflow. I want to make sure everyone can hear all right. So we can start right up here, but this area right back here, this is our outflow area. You guys might hear a little bit of kind of like rushing water noise behind me, and that is part of the outflow because it's high tide right now. And since we're so close to an inlet, we get some big tidal fluctuations throughout the day. That also means that we are able to see a lot of really cool marine life throughout the day as well. So actually, it looks like we might be able to head down there. There's a little bit of a clear spot. Let's go get a closer look. All right, so if you get to come visit Manatee Lagoon, this area right here is our outflow area, and you can get a peek. It looks like right now the visibility is a little iffy, but we can kind of see some fish out there right now. And this is where that warm water is coming out, where the manatees like to gather when it gets really cold, just like we were talking about inside. So do we have any questions yet?
Yes, actually,
Awesome.
There's a question from the online audience. They wanted to know, what kind of soft skills do you need to work in this kind of environment at this organization?
Ooh, what a great question. There's a lot of soft skills that are important for really any job. But especially over here, communication and being able to work as a team is a huge one. So you just saw our whole team. How many of us were there? I think 5 of us today. We're doing this one field trip. So being able to work as a team and communicate to each other when it's time to go is really important in what your projects are. So what you guys didn't see happening behind the screen was when someone was done, they would run over to open a door or get something else ready. So communication and teamwork are huge.
Awesome. Well, I can tell this is a very fulfilling job, but the last question that our online audience had was, what is the most fulfilling part of this job?
Oh, that's such a hard question. There's so many things, kind of top 2. So one of my jobs is to be able to work with Florida Fish and Wildlife to help with manatee rescues and releases. And being able to release a manatee after it's been totally rehabilitated and brought back to full health is so fulfilling, to be able to get those animals back into the wild. But I also really love the fulfillment of being able to teach people about manatees. So we have visitors from all over the world come here to Manatee Lagoon, and some of them don't even know what manatees are. So being able to kind of instill that passion in everyone about marine science is one of my favorite things.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much. I can definitely tell that your passion, you glow with passion when you talk about manatees and the preservation of the environment. And I'm excited to continue to learn more about manatees. I'm definitely going to watch out when I'm on the water. I want to make sure that we keep these animals safe. So thank you so much again, Rachel, for being with us today. And thank you, students, for joining us live.
Thank you so much, everyone. This was so much fun, and I hope to see you at Manatee Lagoon soon.